Hello guys, hello everyone. Do you see me? Do you hear me? How is the sound? Is it okay? I see that uh, actually my picture looks a bit strange. Well, actually when I tested it, it was fine. But yeah, how's the sound? Can you put a plus in the chat box if you see me all right and if you hear me? I'm waiting for pluses. Oh, okay, that's right, that's right. Well, basically, I see that my microphone is working because I see the sign of it. So that's okay. And thank you very much for your lovely introductions. I'm really curious to read them. And thank you very much for choosing to spend this wonderful Sunday noon with me instead of being somewhere outside. I don't know, grilling or something like that. And I also have Irina Shebeka as my Santa's little helper today, and she's gonna react to any problems and questions that you may have during the webinar, but I hope there won't be any problems. Okay, so I think that we are ready to start. People are still coming and joining us. I'm really glad to see that many of you. So the reason why we are all here. When you come to the upper intermediate advanced levels, all the vocabulary that you need to learn, it looks like a boundless ocean. Yeah, and that was a metaphor by a famous vocabulary researcher, Michael McCarthy, because you are like somebody who's standing on a cliff and overlooking this boundless ocean. And this all seems a bit intimidating, I guess, when you think about it. And we are here today to think about what we can do about it and how we can tackle it effectively. So don't be afraid of this boundless ocean. And even if you imagine yourself on this cliff, I'm pretty sure we can swim this ocean bit by bit, slowly. Okay, so I decided to, divide my webinar into sort of opera, in an opera way. So we're going to have overture, main acts, and a coda. And I want to start with this overture. And I gave it a name, quoting Shakespeare. What's in a word? Maybe you are familiar with this phrase. And let's think, what's in a word? So if we imagine a word, yeah, and by word I mean here more or less everything like a phrasal verb or even a phrase or what is called a lexical unit in vocabulary acquisition research. What are the components of the knowledge of a word and about a word? Can you type a couple of examples in the chat box? So what does the knowledge of a word consist of? Any ideas? What do we need to know about a word, usually? Meaning, that's for sure, yes, that's the first thing that comes to our mind. We need to know what it means, but what else? What else do we need to know about a word? Connotations. Oh, thank you very much. Yes, connotations can be positive connotations, negative connotations. And this is the information that can be very valuable. Word family, yes, and pronunciation. Oh, Maria, thank you very much. There's quite a lot of your suggestions. Yeah, so function, spelling, style, and we call it sometimes register. Yeah, yeah, all of these things are connected to the knowledge of a word. And here I want to show you, so this is sort of system of knowledge about a word, and it's based on the research of a very famous vocabulary researcher, Paul Nation. And I'm going to mention him quite a lot today. So let's take a look here. Yeah, so there are three big pillars: form, use, and meaning. With form, we mean spoken, so how is it pronounced? written, how it's written, and what word part it is. I think that this is very clear. I think that you know really well about it. The use, yeah, grammatical functions and colligation. You may not be familiar with the word colligation, but this is the grammar incorporated in a word. Yeah, so for example, that we use particular words only in passive. Yeah, for example, there's a phrase "to be taken aback." Yeah, so we never well. The phrase is in infinitive, to take aback, but we never would use it in active. Yeah, nobody will say he took aback somebody. Yeah, we say I was taken aback, he was taken aback. Yeah, so this is what we mean with colligation. Collocations, well, no comments, I'm pretty sure you know what it is. Constraints of use, and here we are in the area of register, yeah, what we sometimes call in Russian style. And frequencies of how useful, how frequent the word is, and this is the information you can get from dictionaries, and again, more about it a bit later. And finally, meaning, yeah, so the first thing that Vera mentioned, we need to know the connection between the form and its meanings, but we also need to know about the concept. So what is there in the concept of this word, and reference and associations. And here we talk about connotations, different associations that we have with this word. So all of these things are included in the knowledge of the word. My provocative question: how many of these things and which particular things do you need to know about a word to use it productively in your speech? What do you think? Which aspects do we need to know in order to use the word, a word, productively? We don't speak about now a particular word. Form and meaning. Okay, thank you, Elmira. All of them, yeah. Remember I said that the question is provocative. Oh, we have thunder here. Oh my goodness. So hope there's going to be no blackout in the electricity. So the weather is freaking out a bit. Yeah, so all of these things, that's right, all of these things are important to use the word productively and also receptively as well. And this is also what we're going to talk about it today. So just to illustrate, I wanted to give you an example of a word with all of these features. And yeah, with spoken form, we need we mean pronunciation. You are familiar with that. Written word part, it's a verb. Then grammatical functions. It's a transitive verb, and this is important to know when you want to use it. Collocations, a couple of them. Enhance image, enhance quality of life, enhance reputation, enhance features. Yeah, this is only a couple of examples. Actually, there are no constraints of use. I couldn't find any, but the frequency, surprisingly, is very high. Yeah, so this the verb to enhance is a very frequent word, and it's among 2,000 most frequent words. So I couldn't think about it before. Actually, I've never thought that this is so frequent. Form and meaning, yeah, so here we have a definition: to improve the quality or amount or strength of something, yeah, and we can extract good definitions from dictionaries. And concept and reference associations, so when you Google enhance and you look at pictures, the most frequent context will be to enhance so photo editing tools, because this is where this word is used the most. Yeah, because when people edit photographs, they want to enhance the image. They want to look, they want it to look more beautiful, more embellished, sort of. Okay, so let's move on. And when we think about all these aspects of word knowledge, we may ask ourselves, do we give equal attention to all aspects of vocabulary knowledge? And research says that actually not really. So I quote here researcher Brown, who published his article in 2011, and he found that the full meaning link receives most attention in textbooks. No surprise here, yeah. Textbooks do not provide sustained activities that target all aspects of word knowledge, and also teachers mostly concentrate on meaning, around 70% of classroom vocabulary teaching episodes. So we are very much, I would even say, obsessed with this link between the meaning and form, and we forget or don't pay enough attention to all of the other aspects. Yeah, and that's a problem. Yeah, that's a bit problematic. So my first big question here, doesn't your vocabulary learning and teaching look like that? Like the tip of the iceberg? That we focus on the tip of the iceberg, and the rest, that all of the other things that we need to know, they are somehow put aside. Yeah, so this is the first thing to ponder on, to think about today. And I'm gonna leave you with this thought for a moment and gonna move on. And I'm coming to my second overture. And here I quote a famous song by Adele. I'm quite sure you know it, Rolling Into Deep. Do you know the song? Do you know what I mean here? Rolling into deep? Yeah. What I mean here with rolling into deep, I mean a thing which is called depth of processing hypothesis. This one was posed actually quite a long time ago in 1972, yeah, but it's still very, very influential, and it still matters a lot when we talk about vocabulary learning. And this hypothesis sounds like that. The more cognitive energy a person uses when thinking about a word and manipulating it, the more likely it is that they will be able to recall and use it later. To translate it into a simple language, with manipulating, we mean all sorts of things we may use. Matching, filling the gaps, using the word in some ways, so playing with words as well. And what exactly it means, I'm going to also illustrate with a couple of activities that we're going to do with you today. And thinking about the word and manipulating it, this is how we can process the words deeper. And today we're going to look at exactly ways how it may work. Okay, and the first activity for you, yeah? So knowing that there are deeper activities and more shallow activities, here are 4 activities on the first slide, and there were going to be 4 activities on the second slide, taken from a very good book by Scott Thornberry, How to Teach Vocabulary. What I want you to do now is to take a look at these activities that you meet in course books quite often, and decide whether they are shallow or very deep. So put like 1, S, 2, and so on. Yeah. So what about the first one? Put words in alphabetical order. Yeah. This is pretty shallow. It doesn't help you to process the word anyhow. Yeah. It's very mechanic in a way. Yeah. So we all know the alphabet. What about the second one? Look up a word in a dictionary to check the meaning. Do you think it's shallow or deep? When we look up a word in a dictionary, we may learn more about this word. We may learn about different meanings, connotation, examples, collocations, and there are quite a lot of things we can extract from dictionary. That's why it's deeper. Yeah? Rank the words in the order of personal preference. Yeah, so what sort of things you like more? Yeah, order them. Shallow or deep? Yes, it's also quite deep because we think about these things that we need to rank. Well, I don't know, let's say free time activities. Yeah, we think about the meaning of the word and we think how we can use them. Yeah, so it's deeper. And number 4, yeah, prepare questions using at least 6 of these words and ask your classmates. Report their answers to the class. This is a very deep activity because you manipulate the words in 2 rounds. Yeah, you first prepare questions, then you talk, and then you report back. So you manipulate words quite a lot. And yes, it's also a personalized activity, and this is very good. Okay, a bit more. A second set of activities. What do you think about this one? Categorize these words in 3 groups, then identify the odd one out in each. Shallow or deep? We categorize, let's say, again, it can be free time activities, yeah, or we can categorize objects or concepts, and then we identify the odd one. And this is also quite deep because when particularly we identify the odd one, we think about the concept of the words, yeah, and we think in which ways the concepts are similar or different. Okay, what about to translate these words into your language? This is a very interesting one. What do you think? Are they shallow or deep? When we translate a word. When we translate a word, I don't know, chair, and we translate it to kreslo, well, probably not much happens. But what if we translate or try to translate a thing, for example, embarrassing or embarrassment? It's not so easy to translate it, yeah, and there is no like equal translation, and we try to explain what it means, and when we try it, we also process the word deeper. Number 3, make true and false sentences about yourself using 8 of these words beginning I really like or I don't like. Can your partner guess which are true and which are false? And yeah, so you already see that this is quite deep. Again, quite a lot of manipulating happens in the stages of the task. And finally, for listen and repeat the words, yes, it may help with pronunciation, but it's only one aspect. Yeah, so it's pretty shallow. Okay, so you are getting deeper into understanding the tasks. And here we go, the first home assignment. Surprise, surprise, there's going to be a couple of them. Home assignment for the week before the second webinar next Sunday. This is what I want you to do. I want you to take a look at your course books that you're working with now, a course book or a couple of them. Assess the depth of vocabulary exercises there using the scale from 1 to 10. And you see there is a climb, yeah, so from shallow to deep. And think how you can make them deeper. Yeah, so how can you tweak the tasks a bit, yeah, and twist it slightly to make it deeper. Yeah. So as somebody mentioned here, personalization works perfectly. So personalizing the task is always good, and it always makes the activity deeper. Okay, so these were 2 interludes. The knowledge about a word and the depth of processing. And now we finally move on to our first act. And we're going to talk here about 3 steps to your long-term memory. And the first step is noticing. Have you ever heard about this word before? Have you ever met it somehow? I love to talk about noticing. Noticing is one of my favorite subjects in research and in teaching. It was Professor Richard Schmidt who came up with this noticing hypothesis when he when he researched, when he studied Portuguese in Brazil and researched the way he did it, and also his classmates. And he came up with a statement that sounds a bit like Captain Obvious, yeah, and it sounds like that. People learn about the things they attend to and do not learn much about the things they do not attend to. With attend, he meant to pay attention to. Yeah? So we learn things we pay attention to, and we don't learn things we don't pay attention to. How does it work in his hypothesis? Everything that we see, hear, read in a language is called input. Yeah, so everything that's incoming, the books you read, the films, I don't know, series you watch, podcasts you hear, whatever. Yeah, all of these things are called input. But we don't learn or don't even remember all of these things that are in the input. Otherwise, you could watch a couple of series and just speak as they do, yeah, which is we know is pretty impossible, yeah. But when we start to pay attention to particular things, they turn into intake, and intake, it's the part of the input that we notice. Yeah, so we pay attention to them and we start to notice them, and this is the first step of learning. So how exactly can we do that? Noticing happens when we give attention to a language item as a part of the language rather than a part of a message. When you see a word, when you read a text, you see a word, and you think, oh, I have seen this word before. I remember I've seen it somewhere. Or you say, oh, that word is used slightly differently from the ways I have seen it before, yeah, somewhere. And if you again read an article and you pay attention to a particular collocation, think, oh, that's an interesting phrase. Okay, I would like to highlight it. This is interesting. Maybe you write it down. Yeah, so you pay attention to a language item, and it becomes a part of a language rather than a part of a message. Yeah, of what is the content of an article or a message that somebody can send you. Noticing also happens when teachers draw attention to a word, yeah, when teachers pre-teach words, or when you finish working with the text and then teachers say, okay, now let's pay attention to particular words in the text. What does it mean? How you can use it? Let's do a couple of exercises and so on. And also when learners negotiate the meaning. So negotiation of a meaning is also a very important feature, and it means that when two learners, for example, they don't know the meaning of a particular word, and they start to talk about it and try to guess what it's there. Yeah, so this is usually what we mean with negotiating of meaning. More to that, yeah? Noticing happens when we look up a word in a dictionary. In just a moment ago, we discussed that that when you look up a word in the dictionary, you learn more information about the word. When you guess from context, and this is considered to be one of the most useful language learning strategies at all, because you will never learn all of the possible words. They will always be there, whatever you read, yeah? And your ability to guess from context is very, very valuable here. So again, you notice a word or a lexical item and you try to guess it. How exactly we can do that, we're also going to talk about in the next webinar. If we have a word explained to us by a teacher or by somebody who knows the word, when we highlight the words, yeah, so this is, I'm sure, also what you do pretty regularly. It's also called textual enhancement. Remember, we saw the meaning of to enhance, yeah, and now we have it in the context of textual enhancement. When you highlight a word, underline it, make it bold, make it cursive, whatever. And when we deliberately study a word, surely we also notice it. That's for sure. Now it's time to practice. Here is a short text that I adapted from a course book, Expert Advanced, that I love dearly. What I want you to do now is to read this text and highlight words, collocations, chunks that you find interesting, new, unusual. Look at the words, look at the text and type in the chat box anything that you find worth your attention. Miserable weekend, yeah. Dodgy hotel, I like this one as well. Shall remain nameless, and that's a wonderful expression. I borrowed it from this text. It's beautiful. Yeah. I better not mention, yeah? It shall remain nameless. Very elegant. Yeah. Lucrative service, I would say. To took off immediately. Expand into a verb phrase. Yeah, that's quite a lot of them. You see, I chose a text with a lot of these things. I would also say it wasn't all plain sailing. That's an idiom. Crack on with an idea. Okay, yeah. So no surprises, but what I highlighted, what I particularly liked, it's pretty much similar to what you've noticed. Yeah? So we have a good eye for noticing. Yes, and well, basically a natural split. Yeah, nobody has mentioned yet, but yeah. Oh yeah, Elena, I see. Good. So also you can not only just focus on, I don't know, expressions, idioms, prepositional phrases. You can always choose what you want to focus on. If you are a learner or you are a teacher and you want your students to you to draw your students' attention to this particular things, yeah. So here is a slightly different version. So here I highlighted verb patterns, prepositional phrases, and phrasal verbs. Yeah. For example, started writing. If you study verb patterns, it's also a nice point to highlight, yeah, that we use gerund form after start. Took off, yeah, a phrasal verb, expand into prepositional phrase. Took on, phrasal verb. To crack on with something, to crack on with the idea. So here again, I concentrate on slightly different things, and you can always choose what to concentrate on. And how can you practice matching? Noticing, sorry. Yeah, so you gap words you want to focus on, and you usually do a matching task, because noticing, well, it means that we pay attention to it. Yeah, we don't try to remember words. That's our next step, by the way. So you take out the words from the text and you ask your learners to match them into the gaps. Well, you've noticed all of this things before, yeah. So yeah, a miserable weekend, dodgy hotel, and so on. So this is one of the ideas how you can practice noticing. Then one more idea: noticing and listening. I love working with audio scripts after GST and specific information tasks. And this is what I absolutely recommend you. And you can focus on and gap meaning words, prepositions in phrases or prepositional phrases, and word parts. So when you listen when you did the listening tasks, and usually there are two of them. You listen for gist for the first time, you listen for the specific for the second time, you have specific tasks. And as a sort of final activity, look at the scripts, yeah, and ask your learners to notice things. And again, you can like sort of draw their attention to particular things that you want. So let's practice a bit more. So here I made it a bit trickier for you, because here I don't give you any options, but I think that you can cope with that, because here I gapped only prepositions, and I think that you can do it. And take a look at this text, and can you fill in the gaps with prepositions as you read? Well, we spent a whole day at the museum. When I was shown around, one of the curators by, yeah, it's passive, and this is an agent. Only been there, a visitor before, as, the collection, the museum are quite diverse. Of the museum, and there is a whole floor devoted the natural environment, devoted to, of course. Done a degree, the curator, she has done a degree anthropology, in a degree in anthropology, but when she applied the museum to the museum, she decided to focus on social history, and she's been working in this area. Yeah, so here are the keys, and you see, yeah, that even thank you so much, Maria. Even if we haven't seen the real text, yeah, we can quite easily guess the prepositions, and the thing that happens in our brain, that we work on, that we notice and we remember prepositions, yeah, it strengthens our memory, yeah, so we notice prepositions. Okay, so let's move on. To wrap up our talk about noticing, please try to develop an eye for language. Noticing is a skill, and you need to foster it among your students and foster it inside yourself. Use textual enhancement, yeah, so use all sorts of highlighting and gaps to notice vocabulary items. The main thing is that there is no right or wrong ways of noticing. You choose what to pay attention to. And what I always love about noticing is that noticing is magic. When you notice an item once, you start to see it everywhere. And I have loads of reports from my students that when they learned a new item, when they noticed it, they start to notice it elsewhere. They notice it everywhere. And this is actually happens because our brain works in such a way. When you paid attention to something, you see it everywhere. But if you don't, it just, stays like white noise. You don't see this, yeah, because you didn't pay attention to that before. All right, step 2, retrieval. How do we strengthen our memory? Retrieval happens when we think about a particular item, take it out from our memory, and either recognize it in writing or in reading or listening, or when we use this word in speaking. Yeah, so there is receptive retrieval, when again you noticed a word a couple of times ago and you see it in the text again and you remember, yes, that was the word and I remember what it means. And productive retrieval, this is a more challenging thing, and this happens when you want to say something and you remember a word and you say it or write it. So this work of our brain happens when we retrieve. Two things you need to remember. Yeah, retrieval doesn't happen when we see the form and the meaning at the same time. Yeah, when we see the word and the definition or translation, it's not a retrieval because you don't do this work in your head. And this is why vocabulary notebooks don't provide you with good retrieval opportunities. We're going to talk about it later today, about vocabulary notebooks, and I'm going to give you a couple of ideas how you can promote retrieval if you work with vocabulary notebooks. But when you see this at the same time, it's not a retrieval. And also retrieval doesn't equal repetition, yeah, because repetition is just numbers of meetings with the words, yeah, and it doesn't mean that you're going to work every time you repeat a particular word. It doesn't mean that you're going to take it out from your memory, yeah, so don't mix up this. What we need to know about retrieval. Again, a couple of things from researchers. Each retrieval strengthens the path linking the form and the meaning, and it makes further retrieval easier. Yeah? So the more we do this work with our brain, the easier the link, the quicker we remember a word. And when we talk about productive knowledge, about actively using vocabulary, yeah, so the more often we retrieve, the quicker we actually use this word, yeah. So this is what actually how we learn to speak, because our retrieval shortens to milliseconds, and we are able to talk because we remember all of these words that we want to say. For reading, the greatest increase in learning happens between 2 and 3 repetitions, instances when you see a word and retrieve it. For listening, between 5 and 6. So it means that you need fewer repetitions when you read and a bit more repetitions when you listen. And a very important point, if too much time has passed from the last meeting with a word, different researchers say different, they name different length of time, but usually it's something like a month or more. It becomes the first meeting again, and it's not a repeating meeting because, well, you forget a lot about what you know. And the moral here is that just like in sports or in music, you know, when you stop practicing, you don't stop at the same level. You start to fall behind. You start to forget. Yeah, the memory deteriorates. But if you constantly strengthen this connection, if you retrieve regularly, so it becomes an additional retrieval accident. Have you seen this? This is a terrible, terrible forgetting curve. It's called Ebbinghaus forgetting curve. And it says that 20 minutes after we met, a new word, or we learned something, we can retain only like 58% of what we've learned. And when a month passes, we can only retain 21%. Do you see the slide with the forgetting curve? Yes, good. I'm checking because when you are silent, I start to think that something is wrong again. Yeah, so it looks terrible, right? So, oh, really, do we forget that much? Yeah. But, well, Ebbinghaus was a researcher in the late 19th century, and he published this famous study about forgetting. But we have to take it with a pinch of salt. Because how many participants do you think he had in his study? Make your wild guess. How many participants did he study to come up with this wonderful 300. Oh, 300 is a good number of participants, really. 5. Tens of thousands. Oh, yeah, and even now it's hardly possible. 30. You're very optimistic about Ebbinghaus because the truth is there was only one participant in this study. And who do you think it was? It was himself. So it was Ebbinghaus himself. So he researched his own pace of forgetting, and he came up with this wonderful forgetting curve, and it freaks us out 100 years, more than 100 years later. Yeah. So yes, there is some truth. Is that in that? Well, because we know that we forget things. Oh, that's right, but it doesn't mean that for all of the people it would be as bad as this. So there are factors that influence our forgetting curve. And there are a couple of factors, but scientists usually mention 5 of these factors. And well, if you look at this curve, well, they all influence the curve in a different way. Yeah, and it's actually, there is a lot of disagreement, like what particular things influence in what way. But to flatten out your forgetting curve, you need to have some prior knowledge of the subject. Well, imagine if you learn English for, I don't know, the 2nd, 3rd, 10th year. Yeah, so you're already familiar with the language, you use it, you can speak it, and so on. And imagine that you decided to study a totally new language for you, I don't know, Hindi. Yeah, or I don't know, Chinese. Yeah, you can't rely much on that. Yeah, so you don't have any prior knowledge, and it's more difficult, and you're going to forget easier. Remember, again, if you have this experience of short-term study of a particular language, I don't know, you studied a language for a couple of months, and then a couple of years later, you usually, I don't know, remember phrases like "my name is" and "this is it." Yeah? And this is prior knowledge, yeah, and prior knowledge schema. Schema is what you have, the representation of a thing in your head. In pedagogy, we have activities for activating schemata. Yeah, so when I say holidays, can you give me your associations? When you hear holidays, what do you think about? Yeah, and you give me all these wonderful words. And then lying on a beach, enjoying the sun. So this is your schema of holidays. Yeah, and when you study, you also have your schema of particular subject, and the more you learn about the subject, the easier it is to build up your new knowledge on your previous knowledge. Then importance. Well, surely if something that you learn plays a role in your future career, if you want to enter a university, if you want to move up the career ladder and so on, the more important it is, the more you pay attention to that, and the more you notice, yeah, and the more you learn. Then individual differences. Well, I always say that when researchers can't, explain a particular thing, they say, "Oh, this is due to individual differences." Well, but again, we know that we people, we're different. We have different memory. We have different. Well, our memory is trained in different ways. Yeah, so it depends on the age. It depends on motivation. All these things are individual differences. Yeah, and for some people, some things are easier to remember, some things are more difficult to remember. But the last 2 factors, repetition and retrieval, I even highlighted them because they also influence our forgetting curve. Yeah, the more chances you have to meet a particular word, and the more you work in your brain to retrieve, to remember a word. Yeah, so this also influences your forgetting curve. So remember that, yes, we do forget, but we don't forget everything completely all the time. Yeah, it's not that hopeless. Ways of retrieving. We can retrieve receptively when we read extensively, and with extensively I mean when we read for pleasure, something that is not related to, I don't know, to studies, to your homework or something like that, and when you serialize. This is one of my favorite topics. So if you want to have more retrieval opportunities, watch series or read books that are also serialized. Yeah. So for vocabulary acquisition, it's better to read, let's say, Harry Potter, that is 7 books. Yeah, because words come up here all over again. Yeah, and the same way in series, you know, because same words come up more frequently when you watch a series. Yeah, so bingo. Watching series is better than watching separate films because words are repeated there. Productively, using flashcards, gapping sentences, spacing out repetitions, repeating tasks, and personalization work perfectly. But we're going to talk about it in much more detail in the next webinar, because there we're going to see a block about revision and recycling. And I'm going to talk a lot about flashcards and about task repetitions and so on. Yeah. So this is how you can retrieve vocabulary. And here you go, the second assignment. Look at your teaching and learning materials and think, how many opportunities do you have to retrieve words? Try to count them and think how you can add more to your retrieval repertoire. And next time, we're going to talk about it in more detail. And let's practice retrieval now. So you have gapped phrases, but I don't provide you with options anymore. I want you to remember and retrieve those phrases that we talked about a couple of minutes ago. Miserable weekend, thank you. Number 2. Dodgy, the spelling is slightly different. You're gonna see it in a moment. Yes, dodgy hotel, right? Number 3, the first guide was published. It, immediately took off. Thank you very much. Number 4, it wasn't all, says tomorrow. Plain sailing, some, thank you. And the 5th one, James wants to, with the idea, immediately. Can you retrieve this? Crack down? No, because you see, Valeria, Valeria, sorry, it's O, yeah? Crack on. Yeah, crack on. So I prompt you with the first letters. Yeah. Okay. I see that your retrieval is pretty good. Crack on with an idea. Well done. So you see what happened in your brain just now? This is retrieval. And finally, our third step, playing with language, creative use. Creative use happens when previously met words are met later or used in ways that differ from previous meeting with a word. So for example, you met a word in a literal meaning and then you meet it in a metaphorical meaning. You met a word as a noun and then you meet it as a verb. The new meeting with a word forces learners to reconceptualize their knowledge of the word. So you thought that it can be used only in this way, in this meaning, with these words, but then you meet it in a new context and you say, okay, so it can be used in another way. Yeah, and again, what happens in your brain is called reconceptualizing. And I'm going to illustrate it with a couple of examples. The first meeting, we bought half a ton of cement. And we are all familiar with the word cement as a noun because we also have it in Russian. But the second meaning is we cemented our relationship with a drink. And this is called metaphorical extension. So you realize that it can also be used metaphorically. Another example, Chronic pain, you knew this collocation before, and then you meet chronic backache, chronic illness, yeah? And you extend the knowledge of the word collocationally, so you learn more collocations, and this is how you reconceptualize this word. Okay, what do we need to know? When we use words creatively, it leads to a form of mental work that deepens and enriches the level of processing of words and enhances learning. So here we go. We remember our level of processing, or depth of processing hypothesis. This is how we deepen it. When we produce words in ways which are not just repetitions of written exercise, results in superior learning. Again, when we deepen the manipulation. And a lot of creative use of words can be found in graded readers. Next time, we're going to talk about reading and about graded readers in particular. In my opinion, these are the most undervalued tools for language learning, because somehow, well, people refuse to read graded readers because they think that this is not authentic and so on. But in fact, graded readers are superb learning tools, because this is where the same words can be repeated over time and in different meanings, yeah, because the number of words that can be used in a graded reader is limited, and those people who adapt these graded readers, they have to use the same words all over again, but in different meanings. So think about it. It's a very good tool. And again, we can use creatively, receptively, yeah, when we meet a word in a new context that I just demonstrated to you, and also productively, when we produce new ways using the wanted vocabulary in new contexts. Let's practice it a bit. So again, one example, a core meaning and a metaphorical meaning. So try also always to give your students the core meaning, yeah, so that like the most important meaning of a word, and then get them to guess the meaning of figurative sentences in context. So for example, we know that there is a verb to bow, meaning to bend over, and there are two metaphorical figurative senses. He bowed to pressure and agreed. What does it mean here? Can you type in either a synonym in English or a translation in Russian? Surrender, yeah, thank you very much. And I'm sorry to bow out so late. This might be a bit more difficult, but we have the same word in Russian and we use it in exactly the same situation. To leave, yes, thank you very much. Think about the Russian word откланяться when we say goodbye. I'm sorry to bow out so late. So this is it. Yeah? So to leave, to bow out, and to bow to pressure, to give in, or to surrender. A couple of more examples. This is one of my favorites. I love this. I use it for a couple of years. A spring. Yeah, what is a spring? This is what you see in the picture. Yes, spring has even more meanings, but if you think about it, it all comes up to what you see in the picture. And there are three metaphorical meanings that we can easily guess if we know the core meaning. Yeah? As he walked into the office this morning, there was a spring in his step. Yeah, so he jumped out. So he was very, glad, enthusiastic, yeah, and it was demonstrated by the manner of walking. Tom sprang out of bed and ran downstairs. This is again quite easy, but we see the metaphor. And the branch sprang back and hit him in the face. The same core meaning, different situation, different context, and different metaphor, but we understand it because we have this representation of the core meaning in our head. Yes, to bounce. Thank you very much. And my favorite activity, collocation trios. Now you know why every morning in my VK group you have collocation trios as the task, yeah, as your gym for the brain, because collocation trios expand your knowledge of a word and help you to reconceptualize a meaning, yeah, the concept of a word. So for those of you who are, yeah, oh, I see already the answers. Thank you very much. But for those of you who see it for the first time, you see, so there is one word that can be, that fills all the gaps, all the three contexts, yeah? And burn your calories. This is very easy. Allows you to burn a maximum of 3 CDs. This meaning fades away because people don't burn CDs much nowadays. And she's got money to burn. This is an idiom. Yeah? And if you, I think all of you knew the first meaning, yeah, so probably some of you are not familiar with money to burn. Yeah, and from the context you can understand the meaning, and it gonna reconceptualize the word burn in your head. Yeah? So she has got money to burn. Wait till you see her mansion. Yeah, so she has money, she just hides it somehow. And one more collocation trio. The house on the outskirts of the town was in a sorry ho. It desperately needed renovating. For years the two neighboring countries were in a ho of war. Those who came to the airport were able to see a few heads of state, thank you Larissa, coming out of the plane to the accompaniment of the orchestra. Yes, state, that's right. And again, if the third meaning is easy to guess, a head of state, the second one can be a bit more difficult, in a state of war, yeah, and to be in a sorry state is less frequent and maybe new for you, yeah. But this is how you do it, yeah. So this is what we call use a word creatively. So to sum up, to learn a word, you need to notice it, retrieve it, and use it creatively. And now I want to return to the thing we started with, to the thing that you need to know about a word, and to the depths of processing hypothesis. Yeah? And if we sum it up all together, we start to see how it all works. Because you learn more about the word when you notice and when you use the word creatively, and you increase the depth of processing by also noticing and retrieval and also creative use. Yeah. So if you want to use a word productively, you need to work on these aspects all the time. And I've tried to demonstrate a couple of things on how you can exactly do it. And we're going to talk about retrieval more next time. But this is not the end. No, no, no. Now, a very important interlude. I called it half knowledge. Take a look at these sentences. These sentences I took from my CAE student writing. So these are my students on the course of Cambridge Advanced exam preparation. And take a look at the words in italics and think what seemed to be the problem with the words. Both texts examine the peculiarities and different aspects of the ways people choose to get access to music. Is it okay to use peculiarities here? Yes, Olga, it's negative connotation. That's right. Peculiarity means that something is a bit strange, not quite normal, a bit funny, yeah, in a way that's, yeah, but something not very okay with this, yeah. And can you think of a word that can easily substitute peculiarities here? A word that means the same but doesn't have this negative connotation. Yeah, features, exactly. Yeah. Examine the features and different aspects. Yeah, so feature is neutral and it's fine. Number two, in the first text, it is pointed out that with the appearance of file sharing sites, CD sales have considerably decreased. Oh, so I put considerably 2 times. Have decreased considerably. What is the word? What is the problem with appearance? With appearance of file sharing sites. Is it okay to use it here? With the introduction, yeah, and with emergence. Yeah? So they emerged, the websites, yeah, exactly, the websites emerged. So appearance, again, is not very suitable here. The third example, yeah, I recommend to dispose the lack of authentic materials in state schools so that every teacher could use them at a lesson for better effectiveness. Let's first look at dispose the lack. What is the problem here? So first, it doesn't really collocate, yeah? So dispose the lack sounds a bit awkward, yeah? Dispose of something, yeah, but we can't say to dispose the lack, yeah? Yeah, it's a wrong collocation, yeah, and we better just remove it, yeah, and say to replenish, yeah, to for example, yeah, to replenish the deficiency or whatever, yeah, but we have to just remove this verb. It doesn't suit here. And better effectiveness is the same, yeah, it's just a bad collocation, yeah, to use them more effectively, for example, yeah, but not better effectiveness. And finally, another method which is more likely important is work-life balance. Yeah. So more likely important, again, it's a bad collocation. More important, at least, yeah, or is of greater importance and whatever. So what is my point here? All of these people who wrote these things, they were sure that yes, they did use advanced vocabulary, yeah, so they attempted to express their thoughts, but they thought that they knew these words like peculiarity, appearance, dispose of, yeah, and even lower levels like effective or important, yeah, but they all used them in a wrong way because they lacked particular knowledge about the word, yeah, so they didn't know about the connotation, they didn't know about colligations or collocations, yeah, and they didn't know about like the appropriateness of use. Yeah? So my point is that half knowledge is very often the gap between your receptive and productive vocabulary. You may try to use it productively, but because you don't have sufficient knowledge about the word, you don't do it quite in the way it should be. And this gap can be bridged by learning more about a word you seemingly know instead of just learning new words. Yeah? So also think about it. It's so much important to learn more about the words you already know rather than just to try to expand your vocabulary and learning more and more and more words and half acquire them, you know, or be happy with this sort of half knowledge. Okay, Act 2. You know that Marilyn Monroe said that girls' best friend assignments and best friends of any vocabulary learner are dictionaries and corpora. And I hope that you are familiar with these big five. The five most important, reputable, reliable dictionaries: Longman Dictionary of Contemporary English, Cambridge Advanced Learners Dictionary, Oxford Advanced Learners, Macmillan Advanced Learners, and Collins. I hope you know them and I hope you use them, but if you don't, I totally encourage you to do so. And here are the links to all of them, to all of the online versions of them, and you're gonna have all the slides. You're gonna receive them today later in the evening, so you can click on them. And I just want to mention a couple of features of these dictionaries and mention differences between them. So Longman, I'm a bit biased. I love all of them, but I'm a bit more inclined to I love Longman a bit more. So because it has lots of examples from corpus, lots of collocations, and a fantastic thesaurus. Cambridge is good for CFR alignment. Yeah, so this is the only dictionary where you can see a word with a marking like B2 or B1 or C1 or whatever. Yeah, this is a huge work in progress, and they align a lot of vocabulary to it. But already now you can see this alignment, and also it's very good for like lower levels because it has a Russian translation mode. Yeah. And actually, I prepared a video for you, 12-minute video, where I actually compare all this dictionary and show you all of these features. Yeah. So now I'm just gonna go through them, but you're gonna have the access to the video in the email today in the evening, and you can watch it a bit more detailed and try it out yourself. And Macmillan is good for, again, it's information on frequency and also good examples. Collins has very good definitions, very short and concise definitions that are very good to use on flashcards. Next time we're going to talk about flashcards, and there we're going to remember about Collins again. Collins also has a very sophisticated system of frequency, and this is the only dictionary that has video pronunciation. So each word you have a person that pronounces the word, and again for lower levels it can be very useful, yeah, for those people who struggle. And finally, Oxford has good examples, collocations, frequency information, and also lots of references to the corpus. So again, I prepared a video comparing all of these dictionaries, but I think it's going to be a bit of waste of time to show it to you now. It's 12 minutes. You're going to watch it on your own, but please promise to watch it because it's really, really worth it, and I hope that you're going to like it. Apart from dictionaries, we have things, Oxford Dictionaries, yeah, I mentioned. We have things that are called semi-corpuses. Corpus is a singular, corpuses or corpora. These are two plural forms that can be both used. So I sometimes say corpora, sometimes corpuses. First of all, a wonderful source on OneLook. So there you have around 1,000 dictionaries online in one. Yeah. So if you want to really go into depth and make the thorough research of a word, so go there. You can, I don't know, research a single word for hours. But two of the things that are much more useful and user-friendly are sources just the word that is based on British National Corpus, and it's a very useful, friendly corpus. And the source that I absolutely adore called Ludwig Guru. this is where you can search sentences, the sentence search engine with contextualized examples taken from reliable sources. With reliable sources, I mean newspapers, web portals, and so on. So all sorts of Guardian, Huffington Post, New York Times, whatever. Yeah, and I also have a video to illustrate how to work with Ludwig, and this is the video I think I'm going to show you in a moment. Finally, we have corpuses. There are two big corpuses that are freely accessible to wider public and that are good, serious, and very reputable. British National Corpus, BNC, has 100 million words from a very wide range of genres, and Corpus of Contemporary American English, COCA for shortening, but it's not an advertising for Coca-Cola, it's just COCA, and it has 560 million words of text, equally divided among spoken fiction, popular magazines, newspapers, and academic texts. And you also have the link. And the third video I prepared for you is about corpora use. Again, what sort of things you can check in corpus. Corpus is a huge area, so there are loads of things you can check there. I just demonstrated the simplest thing, to check collocations and to check the areas of use, the register. Yeah, I think that we will watch only one of these three videos about Ludwig, about how to check collocations. So I hope it's gonna work. Yeah, I tested it and it should work. The video takes only 4 minutes. Yeah, but it will illustrate how you can work with Ludwig, and I hope you're gonna like it. When I start the video, put a plus that you see the video, yeah, that it works. Okay. Now I would like to show you probably my most favorite tool, a semi-corpus, which is called the Ludwig Guru. And again, I want to start with the task from CAE exam, and this is a photocopy of a book, Advanced Trainer, and this is the first task in the exam that tests collocational knowledge. And a couple of days ago, we were doing this task with my students, and when we came to gap 7, you can see I highlighted it in yellow, yeah, what it could and couldn't do, changes within the industry. And the options are hurried, drove, exerted, and pressed. And the right answer is drove. So the collocation tested is drove changes. But one of my students disagreed and said, and what about press changes? Does this collocation exist? And this is actually the moment where I can use Ludwig Guru. Ludwig.guru is a semi-corpus where you can find sentences and good reliable examples from different media. So the question was about the existence of the collocation to press changes. So I type it here and let's look what Ludwig says. We have 3 exact matches, not a lot, but let's take a look at this. The first one, still none of these bad press changes the fact that. So here we see that this is not really a collocation because a press here is a noun, bad press, and changes is the verb. So we can't really say that this is reliable because press changes here is not a collocation. Let's take a look at the other 2 examples. And move Hillary to press changes to the primary election system. Yes, this is a genuine collocation, to press changes, so this is what we were looking for. And this is from Huffington Post. And the last example, she didn't want to press changes. Well, fine, yeah, so we found 2 examples, but from a million word corpus is actually not a lot. So only Huffington Post used this collocation, and it means that the collocation exists, but it's not frequent. So the frequency is really low. And we are interested in medium strength collocations and something that is more frequent. Let's take a look at the collocation that was right to drive changes. Here we see totally different results, because here we have 60 out of 126 exact matches. Oh, that's the difference comparing to the two that we have to see. Let's take a look at the examples. Can consumers also drive changes in their supply chains? Guardian, okay, good example. Researchers say the data can drive changes in everyday behavior. The New York Times. Again, a very good collocation. Forbes, it gave me the freedom to work and drive changes in business models. Again, very good one. So we see that examples are good, and there is a variety of sources that use this collocation. There are loads of them, yeah, so many different. And we can conclude that drive changes is a much more frequent collocation than press changes. So when we speak about collocations, we always think about their frequency. Yeah, so we teach the probable, not the possible. And whenever your students ask you a question, is it possible to say this or that? You can always check it with a corpus or with a tool like Ludwig Guru, and it's much better and much more reliable than to try to Google search it, for example. So use Ludwig Guru and enjoy it. Okay, if somebody experienced problems with sound, don't worry. You're gonna have this video, a link to YouTube. You're gonna watch it once again, and it's gonna be fine. So, Ludwig Guru, I love it. It's free if you have, I guess, up to 10 inquiries a day. If you want to have more, it asks you for a small fee, but usually for our needs, it's okay. Yeah, yeah. So more than 10 a day, I guess. But again, if you pay for it, it costs €3 a month. It's not a lot. And so there's going to be a video on corpus, on British National Corpus, and checking collocations there, and also on comparison of the dictionaries. Yeah. So take a look at these videos on your own, and here is your home assignment 3. Browse through the sites of dictionaries, semicorpuses and corpuses. Find your favorite tool or tools. Think how it may help in regular learning and teaching. Marie, what if 2 collocations exist and are at the same level of frequency? Well, then fine. Then you can use both. Excellent. But if we talk about exam tasks, so it's usual that only one frequent collocation is tested. If they give you 2 collocations and only one answer is correct, it's just a badly designed task. It happens. Yeah, so item writers just can make it a bit wrong. But in Cambridge exams, in my experience, it's an exceptional case. I've never really met it. I can't tell you more about other exams. Let's move on. Vocabulary notebooks. Rules of good vocabulary notebooks. Write words in context straight away. And remember that less is more. Write only those words that matter. And words that matter are high frequency words and useful words. If you see a very rare, specific, technical term, skip it. Don't pay attention to that. Don't waste your time on that. Yeah. Focus and notice only those words that matter to you. Leave some space between notes during the lesson, and after the lesson, add information to words, and this information can be collocations, examples of use, colligations, remember grammar incorporated in words, word families, and pronunciation, but I would say only if you are unsure or the pronunciation is very specific. We have these tricky words, for example, expertise, that is very often mispronounced. So when you have a word like that, it's worth to notice that this word has a slightly unusual pronunciation, and but otherwise I don't really recommend to write all this in phonemic script, because you can use dictionary and it's gonna be they're gonna pronounce the word in correct way. And also organize words thematically and not alphabetically, because when you're going to revise it, yeah, so you want to see words on the same topic and not just words that are not related to each other, but they are in alphabetical order. But vocabulary notebooks usually don't promote retrieval, and I mentioned it when I talked about retrieval. But if you love using vocabulary notebooks, you can boost retrieval and creative use by reorganizing your notes. And now I'm going to show you 5 ways of reorganizing them. So after the lesson, when you like finish a lesson, so go back to the vocabulary that you studied and try to reorganize them in one of these ways. Draw a mind map. To be honest, I'm not a big expert on mind maps, but I know that there are people who are. And there are many sophisticated ways and techniques of drawing mind maps, but you can start with very basic one. If you studied a particular topic, almost always you can draw a mind map out of the words that you meet. Here I copied a very simple intermediate level or even lower level example from Vocabulary for First, but this is just to illustrate the point. The second thing, a version of a mind map, a word tree. Again, I love this example because again we go from the most general thing, like weather, and then you go for rain, wind, ice, sun, and then you go into like smaller words like pour, shower, puddle, and so on. So this is also a way to reorganize vocabulary creatively. Venn diagrams. Again, Venn diagrams, there are people who are experts on Venn diagrams, and it's used widely in CLIL, content and language integrated learning. But the idea is that you have overlapping, like 2 overlapping circles, and you put those words that are not immediately related to each other on the sides, on left and right, and those things that overlap are in the middle. If you like to organize words in this way, you can find Venn diagrams useful, and if you Google Venn diagrams, you can find loads of ideas. Something that I love more, this one I called collocation octopus, but this I came up with this word. I invented the name. Again, you have a word and you put collocations. For example, a sea, a noun. You can put adjectives: stormy, calm; seafood, seashore, noun phrases; and verb, noun collocates: sail on the sea, swim in the sea, cross the sea. So this is sort of octopus. And finally, the 5th way, which is called collocation forks. No one really knows who invented that. So some people thought it's Leo Sullivan, but Leo Sullivan said, no, it's not me. It's maybe Hugh Della. Then Hugh Della said, no, it's not me. So nobody really knows, but whoever came up with this idea, it's brilliant. You use a word, a head word, and you add the collocations in this sort of 3-way, and it looks like a fork. Controversial: subject, decision, issue. And this is a way for you to expand your knowledge about a word that you studied recently, to look up in a dictionary, and to write it in a fork form in your notebook. And here we go, your home assignment 4. Find your most recent vocabulary notebook, browse through your notes, try to reorganize your vocab on a blank page in one of the ways I showed you, and take a photo of what you've got. Yeah, and before the start of the next webinar, I'm going to ask you to share what you've got. And CODA, we are heading towards the end. Measuring your vocabulary size. Online, you can find loads of different tests that measure whatever they measure. Yeah, so all sorts of things they can measure. But there are a couple of research-based vocabulary size tests, and here I suggest 3 of them. When you go to, when you follow these links, you know, the interface is terrible, but there's nothing I can do. But the website is super useful. And there are 3 tests that you can try out. The first one measures your knowledge of words out of 2, 3, 5, 10,000 words plus academic. It measures your receptive knowledge only. If you are super duper and you have like 90 or 100% of them and you want more, you can go to another test of a similar kind that measures up to 14,000 word families. And if you want to try out productive vocabulary tests, again, here is a link. And next time, when we're going to talk about reading and what sort of how to level out the things that you can read, this information can be useful for you. Yeah, if you roughly know your vocabulary size. And oh, there's going to be your task number 5. Yeah, I'm going to have a final slide with all the 5 tasks that I prepared for you. But study these sites and try out these vocabulary tests. Igor, the link that you sent, this also based on Paul Nation's research. The danger of this particular test is that, again, it measures only receptive with Russian translation, but it adds a couple of thousand words, words that are cognates. So, for example, in Russian and English, we have a couple of thousand words that are similar. What I mean, when we hear mathematics, we know exactly what it means because we have a cognate in Russian, the same word matematika. And even if we take a person who doesn't know any word and a single word in English, we're going to give him words like that and they would be able to guess. Yeah. So when you do test your vocab.com, it gives you a couple of thousands more because of these cognates. Yeah. So you just have to bear in mind. Yeah, the test is fine, but gives you a bit more optimistic estimate. Your takeaways, a wrap up. Yeah, knowing a word is much more than knowing its meaning. The more you manipulate the word, the deeper your brain processes it, the better you learn and remember. Learn to notice the language whenever you deal with it. Find ways to retrieve the vocabulary that you learn and use words creatively in new context and in collocations. Your home assignments. Assess the depth of vocabulary exercises in your course books that you work with. Count the number of retrieval opportunities. Think of any other. Find your favorite dictionary, semi-corpus, corpus. So watch the 3 videos I prepared for you. Look for ways of reorganizing your vocabulary notebooks. Yeah, so find your vocabulary notebooks, look at your notes and try to reorganize them in one of these ways I suggested. And finally, if you're curious, measure your vocabulary size with those tests that I gave you a link for. And next time, we're gonna talk about intermediate plateau and how to overcome it, 5 challenges of advanced learners and how to face them, how to turn reading in your major ally. We're going to have a big block on revision and recycling. And we're going to have a more in-depth look. And I'm going to talk about my passion, flashcards. And hopefully you're going to learn everything you wanted to know about flashcards. So I think that this is it. References, you're gonna, in your information package, I'm gonna attach a couple of articles that I believe are useful and are very much related to the things we talk together with you now. And these articles are free to share, so I downloaded them freely from the websites of the researchers. Yeah, so if you're interested, there it is. Thank you very much for the attention and enjoy your teaching and learning. If you have any questions, I'm here to answer them. I think we have a couple of minutes more. Oh, thank you so much. I'm so glad it went well, and even despite one of the technical problems, I think we're gonna so edit the video is gonna be all right. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm gonna wait for a minute or two for probable questions, but I guess you are a bit overwhelmed. Olga, I said my favorite dictionary is Longman. I somehow biased towards it. And when you watch the video, when I compare dictionaries, you're gonna know why. Yeah, so I'm looking at this video, at this dictionary as the last one. Oh, I'm sorry, there was another question. Reverse context. I guess I'm not particularly familiar with that, so I can't say much about it right now. If you send me the link, I will check it out, and maybe I can tell you more next time. Free collocation, yeah, I guess it's also a nice tool, but I also, there were ages when I last visited it. Again, if you send me the link, I will check it out. Thank you. You see, there are so many resources. It's impossible to know all of them. Yes, so I basically just stick with the ones that I find very useful. Uh, Details of homework exercise 2. Let's go back. Retrieval opportunities. So there was a slide about the ways you can retrieve, that you can repeat tasks, that you can read extensively, listen, serialize, and some other things. And I wanted you to count the retrieval opportunities that you have, yeah, and think how you can extend or have even more retrieval opportunities. What resources do you use instead of Blackboards? You mean when I teach online? Well, I use online Blackboard or Whiteboard. I teach in Zoom, and Zoom platform provides this Blackboard, but mostly I use Chatbox in Zoom when I teach. I don't use much, I don't do much board work. Okay, Dmitry, thank you for the link. Yes, and I think that this is it. Thank you very much, guys. Have a lovely rest of the day. Wait for the email from Irina and me today in the evening. Don't forget about watching the videos and doing your home assignments. And we will meet next Sunday, same time. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.